precious little dragons, welcome back. Alright, today's serious. So as you can tell by the title, this is about my own personal journey and how to be a better ally to people of color and specifically Black people. So obviously the world is a crazy mess right now. There's absolutely no denying that. Everything that has happened in the wake of George Floyd's murder is just the tip of the iceberg. This is something that Black people have been fighting for centuries, and it's not just about the murder of one man. It's about the murder of Black people, systemic racism and oppression, police brutality. It's all intertwined into this complex giant mess that is not easily unraveled. But as always, there is hope. There is a way that we can move forward towards a better world, and even if it's never going to be perfect, we can make it better than it is right now. So I'm just here to talk about things that I have learned personally, and hopefully you get something out of this. I know I don't have a large following, but if this can even just help one person learn how to be more open, more understanding, more empathetic, then it's all worth it. I'm gonna give a few points about how I have learned to be better. And obviously this is a journey that I will be on my whole life. As a white woman, I will never understand systematic racism and oppression in the same way that Black people do. I can't, because I will never experience it firsthand, and no matter how empathetic I am, no matter how understanding or how much I listen and learn, I will never understand that firsthand experience. I will never understand what Black people have to live through every single day. But I will do my best to continue learning and continue growing and continue supporting Black people as we all work to make our nation and our world better. So the first thing I want to touch on is simply listen. Listen to Black voices. Before you jump in with your all lives matter, with your ifs, ands, and buts, listen. You will never understand the first-hand experiences of Black people. You will never understand what it's like to live through racism on a day-to-day basis, and that's okay. Your lived experience is going to be different than other people's. That's fine. That's not the issue here. The issue is when you don't listen, when you don't even try to understand a little bit, when you come in with your own experiences and try to superimpose it over theirs. So before you start to say anything, before you start to speak up, listen. When Black people are angry, when they're upset, when they're tired, understand that it's because they have gone through generations of trauma and oppression and racism. They have every right to be angry. I saw this video the other day of a Black woman saying, "You're lucky that Black people only want equality and not revenge." We are lucky. We're lucky that they have been gracious, but that's not enough. We need to do better. We need to actively listen to their voices, to their stories, not just to the everyday stories, but to the poetry, to the art, to the fiction, to the novels. We need to be more aware of what they are going through. We need to educate ourselves before we try to jump in and say, this is what's happening. This is what I believe is right and correct. You don't understand until you stop to listen. I've been watching a lot of What It's Like to Be Black on Booktube videos in the past couple days. Obviously, my channel mostly focuses on beauty and on books, two things that I love. And watching those videos broke my heart. It did. I have always viewed books as a way to educate myself, to expand my horizons, to learn, to grow, and to listen to their experiences of still being ignored and oppressed and seeing racist comments all over their feeds and not growing at the same rate as their white booktube peers. It's just absolutely heart-wrenching to listen to, because even in a place that should be celebrating diversity and should be celebrating all people the most because of our simple love of literature and of words, there's not. There's inequality in every aspect of our lives, not just when it comes to the law or police, but every single aspect, and these are the things that we will have to work extremely hard to systematically tear down in the same way they were systematically built. And I can't say that I have a perfect answer to it in any way, shape, or form. I don't know that anyone has a perfect answer to it, because this is a very complex issue. But it's imperative that we take the time to learn. I know that there have been times in my own journey where I have felt uncomfortable with all of this, and that's normal. Feeling uncomfortable is the first step to learning. There's a theory in psychology called cognitive dissonance. It's when something you learn doesn't mesh with what you already know. So when it comes to white people having to unlearn how to be racist, this is something that we will face on a day-to-day basis. You may not think that you have ingrained bias, but you do. It's something that is built into you from the moment you step into this world. And it sucks that it's that way. But it means that we have to work intentionally and hard to unlearn it. So, how do we beat cognitive dissonance? There's a few ways that people tend to deal with cognitive dissonance, is to add more supportive beliefs to outweigh the dissonant beliefs. So an example that was given in this article I read said that people who learn that greenhouse emissions result in global warming might experience feelings of dissonance if they drive a gas-guzzling vehicle. In order to reduce this dissonance, they may seek out new information that overrides the belief that greenhouse gases contribute to global warming. So they will seek out information that confirms what they already believe. This is also what we call confirmation bias, when you just seek out information that confirms what you already think is right, instead of seeking out dissonant information and having to actually go through with dealing with that information, which is obviously not what we want if we want to be actively anti-racist. But this is where a lot of people end up. Next is reduce the importance of the conflicting belief. So if you just reduce the importance of it, say it's not as big a deal as everyone's making it out to be, then you don't have to deal with it, because it's not that important. It's something more trivial, like, well, maybe not like your favorite ice cream flavor, but it's something more trivial than a literal life and death matter. And this is another thing a lot of people do when it comes to dealing with cognitive dissonance, dealing with something that is uncomfortable. The last thing is to change your belief. This is by far the hardest option, but when it comes to this, it's the best. So this means you will be uncomfortable. This will be a hard thing to go through with. It will mean having to deeply examine yourself and what you believe and how you have contributed to systematic oppression and racism of Black people and other people of color. That's not an easy thing to do. And saying that doesn't mean that your life isn't hard. It just means that you, as a white person, have not had your life made harder by the color of your skin. So, me, as a white woman, have benefited from the systematic oppression of Black people. I have. And that is something that I have had to deal with, that I have had to cry over, to unlearn, to actively fight against. And it's not an easy process. It's not a process that happens overnight. Even if you grew up in what you consider to be the most open and diverse household, you still have ingrained biases that will take time to unearth and destroy. So how do you do that? Once you have listened to Black voices, which by the way includes diversifying your feed, if everyone on your social media feeds that you follow, that you watch, that you listen to looks like you, there's probably a problem. You need to find other voices, find what they are saying, and like I said, not just in nonfiction, in all aspects of life, in music, art, literature, find diverse voices and listen to what they have to say. And then learn. This is the part where you get to do some growth. This can be fun sometimes, and this can be hard sometimes. Because some of it, like I said, will be expanding your horizons. It will be finding art and music and literature that is created by diverse voices. And that is a beautiful thing. And some of it will be hard. And the learning will never stop. This isn't a step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4. This is something that you will have to keep doing and keep learning and keep growing, and everything kind of happens at once. But learning can happen your whole life. And that's a good thing. Our next step is to go. So speak up. The benefit to having privilege is that you get to use your privilege to speak up for those whose voices have been oppressed. That means that you fight alongside Black people who are trying to make the world better. And this can be done in a variety of different ways. Everyone is gifted differently. So if you happen to be an artist, create diverse art. If you happen to be a writer, write diverse books. Use the power of your words to support, uplift, and fight for Black people. Don't just stick with the status quo. Use the privilege to tear it down. If you happen to be gifted in administration, help organize a protest. If you're gifted in service, go serve and volunteer for organizations that support people of color. If you happen to have money, donate to organizations. Find a way to use your unique giftings to make the world better. It doesn't all have to look the same. That's good. There are so many resources that have been listed in the past few weeks of places to donate, ways that you can help. And don't put all of the burden on Black people to explain things for you. Part of the learning is to go out and educate yourself. Do a Google search. Go read books. It is not their job to tell you what to do. They are already burdened enough. And don't worry about being an imperfect ally. Being an imperfect ally is better than being silent, because silence is complacency. Silence is agreeing with the other side, and that is not okay. So speak up. Use your voice, use your talents and your giftings to support, uplift, and fight with Black people. Next is to educate. So one of the most important things is that racism is not ingrained. Racism is taught. It's taught from the moment that we step into this world, and if we want to combat it, we have to make sure that the next generation is taught how to be actively anti-racist, is not taught those ingrained biases that we were. So it is important that if you have children, if you work with children, if you're a teacher, that you actively make sure to talk about the importance of diversity, to talk about race and prejudice. Your children are never too young to learn about these things. It's just as important as learning about empathy. There are a variety of educational resources that you can take advantage of to have these discussions with children in your life. And there are a variety of books written by Black and POC authors that deal with these topics in an age-appropriate manner. It is never too young to start teaching your children about the importance of diversity and being anti-racist. Those are the most important things I think you can do. But as I said, I'm going to talk about my own journey as well. So what have I done? Well, most of the things I've said. I tend to be gifted in art. I always try to be diverse in things that I write and create. I try to listen to Black voices, to diversify my feed, to understand where people are coming from and listen before I speak. One of the most important things I think I have been able to do is travel. Now, this isn't an option for everyone. I realize that. And it's certainly not a viable option in the midst of global pandemic. But in the past, it's been one of the best things for me. I grew up in a rural area, and our area does not have a lot of diversity on its own. And some places are just like that. You may have also grown up in a place that was not very diverse. You may have grown in a place like New York City, where there's every nationality and ethnicity under the sun in one city. But for me, travel was important because most of the people I grew up with looked like me. And that wasn't through any fault of my own, it's just how it was. So for people like me who grew up in an area where people all look the same, you have to be much more intentional about expanding your horizons, about finding viewpoints that are different than your own. So for me, it was through travel and through the internet. On Instagram, I found communities, fandoms that were like my interests, and that's where I met a lot of people who are vastly different from me in terms of where they were born, the views that they held. But I developed friendships that I have kept years and years later. I have learned and I have grown, and the same thing comes from travel. You will meet people who are different than you, who have different experiences and beliefs and morals, and that is a good thing. And even if your beliefs are diametrically opposed, you can learn something from that. You can learn by thinking. Use your critical thinking skills. Don't just dismiss something offhand. Actually take the time to consider and think about what people have said to you, why they believe what they believe, what is going on in the world. The more you can critically think about the world around you, about the diversity, the beauty of the world around you, the better off you will be. I know that's how it was for me. I was given the opportunity to be a study abroad student in Japan, a nation that is vastly different from the United States. I think that was one of the most important turning points in my teen years, because I was able to see people who lived very different lives to me, who had very different beliefs from me, but I was able to make friendships that I still have today. I was able to learn and grow and think, and that's important. So while you may not have the opportunity to travel all around the world, that's okay. But in the age of the internet, you can absolutely make sure that you are expanding your horizons in terms of what is available online. Make sure that you seek it out. Don't just stay okay with the status quo. Keep learning, keep growing, keep talking to others, keep developing friendships with people who are different than you. Those are pretty much all the notes I had. So I'm at the end here, and I'm trying to think if there's anything else I want to impart on other white people about how they can learn, how they can grow. All I have is just keep trying, keep loving. Sometimes the world is really sucky. This year feels like one of those times. It's been a hard year, but it's been hard centuries for Black people. If we as white people don't take the action to tear down institutionalized and systematic oppression and racism brick by bloody brick, the world is not going to get better. We have to start standing up and keep it sustained. This cannot just be a movement of a couple weeks or a couple months. This needs to be a change that lasts. It has to be. This isn't a video about convincing you that you're wrong. This isn't a video about discounting your own experiences. This isn't a video about trying to insert myself into a narrative for clout. This is about trying to change the world, trying to grow and be different and learn. And I want you to come along that journey with me. I want you to experience growth, to appreciate and love diversity, and to actively fight against wrong, to actively fight against racism and prejudice. And if your heart isn't broken in these past couple weeks, then I don't know what to tell you. I've included resources down below of places where you can donate, books you can read, creators to follow. I hope you take advantage of that. I hope that if you have not already started your journey on learning to be anti-racist, on learning to appreciate and love diversity, and to support Black people, that you start today. It is never too late. With that, I think I'll be done for today. Thank you so much for joining me. I love you all so much. Stay magic, keep reading, be safe.